What if belonging wasn't measured by your achievements, your GPA, or how many trophies lined your shelf? What if it had more to do with how you looked, where you came from, or the color of your skin? At Evergreen Academy, those questions weren't just musings, they were reality. An elite private school nestled among tall oaks and manicured lawns. Evergreen was known for its legacy, its lineage, and its exclusivity. The students there wore last names like crowns, names etched in gold on donor walls and auditorium seats. It was a place where fitting in wasn't just about being smart. It was about being born into the right family, with the right history, the right skin. Layla Carter knew this truth better than anyone. The first time she walked through the grand, arched entrance of Evergreen, clutching her scholarship acceptance letter in one hand and her mother's hand in the other, she felt every eye on her. Some curious, some amused, most judgmental. Her shoes weren't designer. Her hair wasn't salon-blown. Her name wasn't Winslow or Hargrave or Montgomery. And that meant something here. Now, 2 years into her time at Evergreen, Layla had learned how to blend in, or at least survive. She moved through the hallways with purpose, never loitering too long in one place. She spoke when called upon, but never too loudly. She sat at the far end of the cafeteria, near the window with the view of the tennis courts, quietly eating her lunch while the rest of the school socialized around her. She had earned her place with straight A's, statewide debate championships, and faculty recommendations that glowed with admiration. But none of it ever felt like enough, especially not when Blake Winslow was around. Blake was Evergreen Academy royalty. Blonde, polished, and effortlessly arrogant, Blake carried the kind of privilege that made others part like the Red Sea when he walked by. His father was a board trustee. His mother chaired the annual gala. And the Winslow name wasn't just on the building, it was the building. The Winslow Science Center was as much a monument to his lineage as it was to academia. To Layla, Blake wasn't just a bully. He was the embodiment of every door she had to break down just to get through the same hallways he glided through effortlessly. And today, that resentment would boil over in front of the entire school. It started like any other lunch period. The bell rang, and students poured into the cafeteria like a tide, some laughing, others glued to their phones, a few carrying books they pretend to study between bites. Layla walked in alone, as usual. She moved toward the far end of the room, tray in hand, eyes straight ahead. She could feel the shift in energy before she even saw him. Blake Winslow had just entered with his entourage. A trail of laughter followed him, as it always did. He slapped one of his friends on the back and grinned at another before his eyes landed on her. Layla didn't flinch. She kept her pace steady and deliberate, even though her stomach twisted into knots. You'd think the help would use the service entrance. Blake's voice cut across the room, loud and clear. It was an old jab he'd used before, but this time it had venom. Some students laughed nervously. Others glanced toward Layla, unsure whether to join in or pretend they hadn't heard. Layla paused, her tray still balanced in her hands. She didn't look at him. Not yet. "What's that, Carter?" Blake sneered. Didn't catch the dress code memo? Or his goodwill out of uniform skirts? There it was. Another dig at her clothes, her background, her presence. She found her table and sat down quietly, trying to ignore the heat rising in her cheeks. She told herself to breathe, to be better, to rise above it. But Blake wasn't finished. "Maybe they let you in as some kind of charity project," he continued, voice dripping with mockery. "You know, so the brochures could look more diverse." The word hung in the air like a rotten smell. A few students shifted uncomfortably, but no one said anything. Layla looked up, finally meeting his eyes. "I earned my spot here," she said quietly. Blake tilted his head, faux intrigued. "With what? Affirmative action? Or just enough sob stories in your essay to make them cry?" This time, the laughter was louder, crueler. Layla's hands clenched into fists under the table. She had spent months, no, years, proving herself, working late into the night, sacrificing weekends, pushing herself harder than anyone else just to sit in the same classrooms as kids like Blake. And none of it mattered to him. But today, she wasn't going to stay silent. She stood. The cafeteria quieted almost instantly. Blake looked momentarily surprised, but quickly recovered his smirk. You want to talk about privilege, Blake? Layla's voice was steady, but it cut through the air like glass. Let's talk about it. A ripple moved through the room. You walk around here like you own the place because, technically, your family does. Your name is on the building. Your mom throws cocktail parties for the board. You get invited to internships before applications even open. Blake's face tightened, but Layla didn't stop. You want to mock me for what I wear? For not having a family crest or a summer house in the Hamptons? Fine, but don't you dare act like you earned this more than I did. A heavy silence fell. I didn't get here because someone opened the door for me. I got here because I broke it down. While you were off skiing in Aspen, I was studying in the public library until closing. While you were getting tutoring from professors your parents paid, I was teaching myself calculus from second-hand books. Students turned. Heads shifted. The attention now rested squarely on Layla, and not in the way it used to. You mock me for not fitting in, she continued. You're right. I don't blend in the background, and I don't pretend to be someone I'm not. And I will never apologize for being here. A voice clear behind them. Principal Whitmore had entered the room. His expression was unreadable as he surveyed the scene. What's going on here? He asked. Blake's smirk reappeared like a reflex. Nothing, sir. Just a friendly conversation. The principal turned to Layla. MS. Carter. She didn't say anything. She didn't have to. Mr. Whitmore glanced toward the cafeteria staff. Mrs. Delaney, may I ask who funds the school's student lunch program? The woman behind the counter looked up from her clipboard. The Carters, sir. Layla's grandparents. They've sponsored the program since last year. It hit like a thunderclap. Mouths fell open. Even Blake looked stunned. The irony was too perfect. The very program Blake had once joked was for charity kids had been funded by the girl he was mocking. The principal nodded. Thank you, Mrs. Delaney. Then he turned back to Blake, his voice cold and deliberate. Mr. Winslow, consider this your final warning. You are suspended from the cafeteria for the remainder of the term. Gasps echoed. Whispers stirred. Blake opened his mouth to argue, but no sound came out. Layla sat down slowly. Her lunch was cold now, but for the first time in months, she didn't care. She had said what needed to be said, and for once, everyone had listened.